Okay, so let's start. I hope everybody's back here.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, there is a term called estimation. Now, estimation is something that we use in our daily lives. We say estimate of time, estimate of cost, estimate money, estimate quantity. So, estimate is something which is very much part of the project management. So, estimation is used in time, estimation is used in the cost. Okay, so what is estimation? Estimation is a quantitative assessment of the likely outcome or the quantity. It should always include some indication of accuracy. Like, see, whenever I get a project in the beginning, so the details are not so much clear for me. So I say that, okay, we can do it in, say, 100 days. But normally, you know what happens, we do not indicate the level of accuracy to the prospective client, and that can later create some confusion regarding the expectation of the final duration. So whenever we give some estimation, we should also indicate that what is the level of accuracy. Okay, so that the estimate can be understood in the in the right context. That it is a rough estimate and it is a little bit refined. So you know, as we get more and more details, so it's easier for the client to also understand that the estimates they change. So the final estimate would be entirely different from the initial estimate because it is dependent upon raw data or incomplete data or incomplete picture, right? So estimate has various methodologies and different types. One is the most common, that is the analogous. So estimate is done using the values of parameters from previous experiences with similar activities. So basically, you know, if you have the access to the archive of any similar previous project, okay, so that can serve as the base for current estimates of the project. So that is the analogous. So that is the analogous estimate. So it is very convenient and quick. Sometimes you have some kind of estimate which is required by the client very quickly to basically to start or settle a deal. So you can give some sort of the top level estimates. You don't go into the details or to the second or the third level of the task. So you basically chop up the project into 5 or 6 pieces, and then you say that, okay, this is a rough estimate. So even that kind of an estimate is the analogous. Then the another kind of estimate is the parametric. Now parametric is an estimate which is calculated. Basically, you have certain formulas or methodologies in every industry which is used to calculate the values. So that is called the parametric. Now, suppose for example, I ask you that what is the number of the tiles required in a particular room. So how would you calculate the number of the tiles?
You measure the room and you know the amount of tiles that would go into a similar area.
Yeah, you have to first measure the room, then you have to measure the tile also. So you can divide
Yeah.
the room surface area with the surface area of the tile, and what you will get is the approximate number of the tiles that you would need. So you know that kind of an estimate is based upon some mathematical formula or a calculation. So that is parametric. Similarly, in software industry, we have estimate basically to determine the work effort needed to develop a huge enterprise level software. So that is called function point analysis. So there are people, those who are function point analysts, so they work closely with the business analyst. Okay, so they look at various functionalities of the software, they come up with the time duration and the work effort needed to develop the software. So the software can be determined or estimated in terms of time, in terms of work effort, and in terms of cost also. So this is a parametric way, and similarly the civil engineers, they calculate what is the total amount of material required for the project if they want to build a building. So what is the total amount of bricks, mortar, steel, cement, girders, whatever they need, you know, they have their own ways of calculating it. So that is the parametric estimation. So whenever I'm talking about the estimation, so estimation, it's something which is common between time and cost management. So you would find the estimation using the same values and the same, estimation using the same definitions in the cost management also. It's not limited to the time management only. Now there is something called bottom up. Now bottom up is basically you first develop the work packages in the WBS, and then to get the total estimate of the project. So what you do, you look at the individual work packages and you total them up and you work up your way up to the total estimate. Okay, so that is called a bottom up estimate. You start from the bottom. So this kind of estimate, so if you look at the analogs, it is from top to bottom. And if you look at the bottom up, basically it's going up the work packages. Okay, so that way, the bottom up is more accurate than the analogous. But you have to keep in mind, so when you would do it when you have landed the project. It's not that you will take some time, take a lot of time to do a bottom up estimate for to give some code to an say a prospective client. So that won't work out because the client prospects, they don't like to wait that much. So you have to give some sort of analogous estimate quickly, and then you have to also mention that what is the accuracy level. Okay, so that there can be a proper expectation of the outcome. So keep in mind that bottom up is the most accurate way to assess a project, and that is used before you are going to baseline or planning the project. Okay, and it is the most accurate and time consuming as well. And next comes the 3-point estimate. Now 3-point estimate is also called the program evaluation review technique. It's called PERT analysis as well. PERT. Now when you would use it, basically, you have, say you have a project in which you are doing something which is absolutely new, and there are many people, those who are willing to provide their expert judgment, okay, regarding the estimation of the task. Now these people, they do have certain amount of knowledge because of their experience, but then everybody has a different range. Okay, so what do? You take all the data from everybody. So there will be a set of people, those who will give you the optimistic, that is the minimum. Optimistic means the minimum time. Then there will be people, those who will give you the most likely time, means something median. And then there will be set of people, those who will tell you the maximum time. Now if you look at this PERT analysis, so you are, say, trying to determine that what should be the duration baseline or baseline duration of a task. So different people are giving you different. So one says 5, then another says 15 days. Then there are a lot of people, they are saying 4 days. So the statisticians and the mathematicians, they have devised this formula, so which will give us the average sort of. So this is a weighted average. So what they say, that you add optimistic, that is the minimum, once, you add the most likely time 4 times, then you add the maximum or the pessimistic time 1 time. So 1 plus 4 plus 1 is divided by 6 to give you the result. So here we can see the result is 8 days. So this is called a weighted average. So the weightage is given, so the weightage of 4 is given to the most likely time. So the most likely estimate is used as basically to weigh out the other two extremes, that is the optimistic and the pessimistic. So optimistic means that the minimum estimated time, and pessimistic means the maximum estimated time. But then the weighted average gives you something to baseline. So it has been observed by practice that the weighted average is definitely very, very near to the realistic thing. So once you have the actual work execution, then in future you can just refer to the actually calculated value instead of doing it But when you don't have anything to refer to, but in every project, you cannot have the open-ended time duration, because that's a risk that will introduce a schedule risk if you keep an open-ended time duration for every task. So every task must have some sort of baseline, so against which you should be able to compare and determine that whether you are on time or not. So in cases where you are doing some kind of blue sky research or something absolutely new, and you are taking the opinion from various people, so you can use the 3-point estimate to arrive at a figure which you can reliably use as a baseline, right? So this is something new, guys. I hope this is interesting. So actually
Yes,
this,
very much.
yeah, so
Yes,
actually
that's
this
interesting.
was devised by the US Navy during their missile programs. So it has been around since I believe it has been around since 60s, early 60s. Okay. Now there is a schedule network analysis technique. Now these techniques are used to produce the project schedule. Now these are something which is to be known by you, and we will look at the resource leveling and the critical path. Now before I go into this, I would like to show you the critical path, because if you understand the critical path, then you would be able to understand that why we need to do this kind of analysis. Because in every project, whenever you start the project and you try to create the project schedule, you would realize that the project schedule at the first time it does not catch up with the delivery date. You have a delivery date and your plan goes beyond the delivery date. So what you have to do is compression. So how do you do the compression? So it is something that will be discussed right now, and so that you can understand the basics of it, and whenever you are using any software, and you can do the compression effectively. But before you do the compression, you got to understand another basic fundamental, that is the critical path. Now I'm going to show you the critical path. Just hang on for a second. Okay, so what do you see on the screen?
The Gantt chart.
Gantt chart. So if you look at this, so on this Gantt chart there are several paths. So how many paths are there? I mean the relationship, the create a path. Like if you look at this, so this is a path. So this is a
4.
path. Yes, absolutely right. So this is a path.
4 parts, yes.
This is a path which is having a single task. This is another path, and this is another path. So this is also having a single task. So there are 4 paths in this project. Now if you look at the top, what is there at the top? The top is representative of the project duration. If you look at this bar, do you see this sort of this brown bar you have at the top? So that is representative of the project duration. So where is the project duration is getting calculated from? If you look at the path carefully, where do you think it's coming from?
From the last one, from the 4th project.
It's not the last, it is the longest. Okay,
The longest, yeah, I mean this.
okay. So this is matching up with the longest. So, this path which gives the duration of the project is called the critical path. Critical. Why it is called the critical? It's not because it is technically critical. It is called the critical path because if the work is delayed on this path, the project will get delayed. So what the project managers they used to do after they used to draw up the Gantt charts, say traditionally when there was no software, so they would be doing it on big chart papers. So what they would do that they will take a red pen and mark through it like this. Okay, and now what they are trying to do, basically they are trying to understand if there any kind of constraint which can affect this, like constraint of people, constraint of material, a constraint of equipment. If there is any kind of a constraint which can impact the work to be done on this path, so their idea was to preempt that. They didn't want that to happen. Now, the critical path is important for a project manager to know. Because if the critical path is not known to the project manager, one thing is that the project manager wouldn't know if the project is getting delayed, and in the planning stage you wouldn't know how to compress the project. Now, the critical path, as we can see, it is the longest path. Now, if I have to know that it is a critical path, so these days, you don't have to take a red pen and draw. All you have to do is just push a button on the software and know that it is a critical path. Now, what happens normally when a critical path is known? The project manager calls up a team meeting and you look at basically the people, those who are going to work on this task. You ask them clearly that, do you have any vacations planned during this project? So you guys are working on the critical path. So there will be people working on the non-critical and the critical path. So the set of people, those who are working on the critical path now, you got to focus on them. You got to make sure that they are available. And if it is very important for them to take some vacation during the execution of the project, so what should you do? You should make sure that there are substitutes which are available, right? Because as you can clearly see that if the critical path is extended, it would extend the finish date of the project. It would push the finish date of the project itself. And do you think that's a desirable thing to happen? If the finish date of the project is pushed?
Yes.
Not at all. So no project manager would like to have a delay on the committed finish date. So this is a finish date which is committed. Let's say it is the committed. So it's known to the client, it's known to the senior management, it has been approved by the senior management, and it is known to many other stakeholders. So it's not a desirable thing. So what would you do? So you would basically try to ensure that all the resources that are needed to do any task on the critical path, that is available, right? So that should be done so as a precaution so as to manage. Now that is about when you have a final critical path. Now what is done before that? Suppose if you look at the duration of the project, it is 15 days, right? So your boss comes along and asks you, and he tells you, and he asks you something. He says that, see, this 15 days is too much. Can we reduce the duration to 12 days? So now I'm going to ask you guys, if I ask you to reduce the duration to 12 days, then what would you be doing? Tell me, where you would start from? Would you reduce the duration of this task? Will that be useful? If you want to reduce the duration by 3 days down to 12 days?
No.
Yes, so you will try to reduce the critical path first. So what would you do? So you would say that, okay, boss, can I have more resources if needed? Boss says that, okay, first you do your calculation, then tell me finally that what is the maximum number of people that you need. So you just go to the critical path, you apply certain number of people, do a mathematical calculation, and you reduce it to say 13 days. So you reduced it by 2 days, but the project got reduced only by 1 day. Now, what is the problem, guys? I reduced it from
The
15
criti-
to 13, but the duration of the project got reduced by only 1 day. So then what is the problem?
the critical path is on the row 3 now.
Yes,
Now
because
that's not the critical part anymore.
yes, that's not the critical path anymore. Now that's the task which was the next in line. So that was a little bit shorter than the critical path. Now it has become critical because now it is the longest. So now you look at the critical path. Now this critical path has got 4 tasks. Okay. Now where does your common sense tell you that where to reduce out of these 4? Which ones would you consider?
Mm, yeah.
It's not something that I have to tell you. It's something that
Number
what
8.
they can do is number 8. They can work at the weekend.
definitely you would look at the tasks which are longer because it makes more sense to apply resources on the longer tasks. Because longer tasks, they have room for compression, isn't it? If something is so small, then how much you can compress? How many days you can squeeze out of a, say, 2 or 3 days task? But suppose if you have a 5 days task, don't you think that gives you more opportunity to squeeze out some duration, right or wrong? So this is what we do
Well,
this is how we do the compression. Now, what do I do? My boss wants the project to finish in 12 days. So I have 2 more days to reduce. So what I do that I apply certain resources on this and I reduce the duration by 2 days. So that becomes 3 days. This task is 3 days. So even that doesn't solve the problem. See, it is still 15 days duration. My boss says that you should do it in 12 days. Now, what is the problem here?
I think we have to add another project, like a 5th one, where you increase labor.
Yes, now we look at the critical path. Now the critical path is right now shifted to task which is on the row number 9, right? Because the critical path is the longest one. So now this becomes shorter. So though I've reduced it by 2 days, but the reduction at the project level is just 1 day. Now what do? I apply some resource here and it becomes 12 days. Now I have 12 days. Now, how many critical paths are there in the project?
3.
3.
3.
Yes, it is possible. But do you agree, guys, there will be at least one critical path in a project always?
Yes, the longest one.
Yes, because the finish date of the project, if you look at the finish date of this project, so where is it being derived from? It is being derived from the longest path. So a project has a minimum one critical path. Okay. So this is something you can note down in your notebooks that a project has a minimum one critical path and critical path is the longest path in the project network diagram or a project
But wait
diagram.
one second, Sujoy. Is it clever now to have 3 critical parts? Although, I mean, 3 are red, but I do know now that the longest is the critical.
All
But is
these
it not
three,
high risk to do that?
yes, absolutely right. No, you have reduced the overall duration, but the probability of the project delay has increased. Why it has increased? Now let me tell you why. Because see, the probability of the schedule delay is dependent upon the number of the critical tasks. Now the number of the critical tasks in this case is 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 plus 1, 8. 8 critical tasks is there. So just keep in mind that the more there are critical tasks, more is the probability of schedule delay. So which is very common sense. I mean, if you have more critical tasks, so the probability of the schedule delay is more. But definitely I am trying to reduce the duration of the project from the initial duration. So this is what we call as project iteration, planning iteration. So when you plan a project for the first time, it will never fit into your expected duration. Now if you have to deliver to the client, okay, you have a deadline, okay, or you have a final date on which to deliver. So normally what is my suggestion is that you should keep some room for variance. Now what is a variance? Now let me explain this to you. Now the variance thing is like this. Suppose you have a project, okay, say 100 days, right? So let me switch over to the Excel sheet. Now there is a variance of plus minus 10%. I hope you can see this, see my screen clearly.
Yes.
Yep.
Yep.
So what does it mean? It means that the project can be completed. It's possible to complete in within the range of 90 to 110 days. Now 100 is the base. So basing the project duration on 100, so if I'm doing very good, So, I can finish the project in 90 days. And if I'm doing the worst, I can still finish the project in 110 days. Now, suppose if your, say, delivery date, I mean, the client, he wants it on 1st of Jan 16. So which date should you be targeting as your target date? So what should be your target date?
Mine is 100.
So what should be your target date? If it is a 100 days project with a variance of 10%, then what should be your target date?
21st of December or
Yes, so it should be 10 days prior to the delivery date. So it's like this because there is this variance. So what does variance tell me? It can go 10 days more or 10 days less. So I said 10. So that should be your target date, that you should by maximum you should finish by 22nd of December. Okay. So now what if you finish it by the best date? So this is the best date, or you can call it the earliest date, or you can say do you get this? Why this is late finish and early finish? Because the variance is 10%. Now what is the PMI philosophy? PMI says that as per their observation of the final project plan, they say what PMI recommends that the final project plan should not it should never have a variance of more than plus minus 10%. But yours can be better. What they're saying is a best practice as per their observation all these years. So this is what they recommend. If you have a variance of more than plus minus 10% in your project plan, then you should look over the plan, sit down with your team and let it go through another couple of iterations and bring it below plus minus 10%. Okay, because if it is more than plus minus 10%, then it is going to drive you nuts. Controlling the project. Okay, so make sure that you have 10% or below 10% is better. Now when I'm doing my estimations, I'm looking at three parameters. Just keep in mind. Do you get this point? Time. I say that okay, in my project, time will have a variation of, say, it can have a variation of minus 5% to ranging to 10%. Cost will have a variation ranging to plus 9%, and work effort, the man hours, will have a variation ranging from to plus 8%. So these are called the variance limits. Just have you heard of expansion joints? Expansion joints. Where are these?
No.
No, no, you guys know already. Which one of you is a civil engineer?
That's minus.
No, have you heard of the term expansion joints?
I've heard of the term, I'm not a civil engineer.
So who is a civil engineer here? Who is working on infrastructure?
I'm working on the infrastructure and on the mechanical work.
See,
Minus.
See, when you have bridges, the bridges have they have got spans, between the spans. So what do they do? Just wire the screen carefully. So they don't join it end to end. They don't. They leave some room here. This room. Do you see this maroon color?
Yes.
That is the
Yeah. Yeah.
expansion joint. Why this is
Okay.
due to the variance in the length. See, during the summertime, the metal expands. Now, if the metal expands and you don't leave any gaps, if you don't leave a room for variance, what will happen? The bridge would just buckle up or it might just crumble. The concrete or the masonry
Yeah.
can crumble up, right? So in a project also, you can view a project like a sort of a span. So this 100 days. So what is this 100 days? So this 100 days is like a span. So this span is basically having a variance of certain duration based upon the time length. Okay, so it has a certain variation. So that is the plus minus. So I can say variance. I can say just plus minus 10% what of time only if I'm concerned with time. But here I'm concerned with three things. I say that in my project the variance of time will be the best which I can tolerate is 5 to 10%. The cost is plus 9%. I do not expect my cost to go any lower. Yes, but I can finish 5% before the planned time. But as regards my planned cost, it can go up to plus 9%, and my work effort can go up to 8%. So you should have this understood in the beginning so that you would know that if you are delayed in terms of time, whether you are going over the budget in terms of cost, or whether you are working in or putting in more labor or working more man hours than required so that you can finish the project within the constraint. So every project has a constraint and we must use the estimation technique to do this. So is the term variance clear, guys? I mean, what is meant by variance?
Yes.
So everything has a
Yes.
variance. If you look at those power lines, have you noticed they have something, they are just hanging a little bit loose, they have a slack. And if you would notice the power lines during the winters, you will find they have gone up. They've gone up a little bit. So during the summers they come down. Okay. So you must have variance in the project. So you expect to give to the client on the 1st of Jan. Now that is something which is very, very fixed. Now this is the late finish. So how late you can finish is this much. How early you can finish is this much. And this is due to this variance of 10%. So the 10% has a plus side. The plus side will take you there, and the minus side will take you to the early finish. You should know. So you must leave a room. So you should target, say your 22nd December. So that if you are late, so you would still be complete. If you have delayed, so this is your target date. So actually, so the latest would be 31st of December. So this is how we plan our projects as well, and we make sure that we can understand and plan our. Now, when we come to the resource leveling, now one thing that you have to keep in mind that resources are the people, resources are the machines. Okay. Now, if you put more people to a task can finish earlier, right? And that is called the resource leveling. Sometimes the resources are not available. If resources are not available, then you have to make sure that you can shift the duration of certain tasks. So that is the schedule network analysis technique. So I will show you the resource leveling. So guys, before I go to the resource leveling, so just tell me, is the critical path clear?
Yep.
Yes.
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 Yeah.
Okay. Now let me show you that what is resource leveling. Okay. Now just watch the screen. Now I will just tell you the story. It's like this. I'm creating a project plan in which I've got two tasks. Task 1 and 2, they are happening on the same dates. Now what happens if I assign this task to one person? If I assign this task to one person, it would look like this. Do you see this red happening? This red, the icon which comes up. Because
Yes.
because one person can
Yeah.
give me an output of 8 man hours, right? So this is the average which is accepted as a standard all over the world. So this is what is established by the long experience of the humanity. So over a period of time, so they have established that a normal work effort from a person should be taken at 8 man hours. So this 8 man hours is basically having breaks. So or you would notice that organizations have a 4 hour first shift, then lunch break, and then they have a second shift, which is the evening shift. So I mean this is the later half. Okay. So that is the 8 man hours. Now if I am using the same person for these two tasks, so basically what I'm asking for an output of 16 man hours. So which is not possible. Just have a look at the resource usage. I'll show you that how the resource is being used. So the resource is required to do say a task, say a 14 or 16 hours, so which is not possible. So basically what we want that this resource should be leveled. Now how do we level the resource? So what would you do in real life if I told you, see, you have got only one person to work with, so what would you do?
Add another label. Add another man.
That is fine. But suppose if I tell you that I can you provide you another worker, so then what would you do?
You would you would put the tasks in succession maybe.
Yes, so you will shift one of the tasks to a later date. So you know what will happen? It will stretch the duration of the project. So which is a very, I mean, understood thing. So if you look at the top, so do you see that the top line duration on the row number 0, this duration,
Mm-hmm.
which I will
Yes.
Yep.
mark in the yellow. So that is the duration of the project. So currently I'm trying to level the resource. Now two ways. First option, if you have one more person, the the project can be finished in 5 days. But if you don't have another person, then you have to shift the duration of one of the tasks. So that is called resource leveling. Either you bring in one more person or you shift the task to a later date. So what do you do? So you say, no, I want to level it according to the availability of the worker. I don't have another person. Please shift the later task to a later date so that the worker is leveled against the requirement. Requirement is 16 man hours per day, but the availability is 8 man hours per day, right? So you have to reduce the requirement from 16 to 18 because you don't have another person. So you stretch the duration. So the after the leveling, it would look like this. So you go to this option. I'm not actually trying to teach you the software. What I'm trying to tell you is that what is the scenario when you level. So what happens that you would say that, okay, let us start the task 2 after the task 1 is complete. Now here, as you can clearly see that the task 2 is shifted to later date and the total duration of the project is changed. Do you see this overall duration? The overall duration is now 10 days because you have leveled on basis of lower availability of resource. If the resources are low, duration is more. If resources are more, then duration is less. Now see this. If I do it the other way, suppose my boss tells me, look, the delay is not acceptable. Can you get it done in 5 days only? Then I tell boss, give me one more person. He says, fine, okay, I give you one more person. So what do? I give the task to another person. So just look at this. See, here I have, as you can see in the chart, I believe that it's not very difficult to understand. See this. So worker 1 is in red color. You see this red color for the worker 1?
Yep.
Because the worker 1 is doing two tasks. So he's trying to do more than he has been allocated more work effort than he can possibly give the output for. And then there is worker 2. Worker 2 is doing nothing at all. So what do I do? Normally what I would do if worker 2 comes, so boss, give me some job. So I'll say, okay, fine, worker has more on hand to do. So what do I do? Just grab and give him the task. So it is leveled, right? So both of them are now having the amount of tasks that they can do. The project gets done in 5 days or something like that. Okay, so that is because the work is now divided between two people, so that gets done faster. So there are certain tasks in this world, if you apply more and more people, the duration is reduced. Okay, and if you apply less people, the duration is increased. Okay, so this is how it works out. Now just see this example. Say task 1, I'm removing the task 2. Now this has got one person to do the job. Now what if I apply another person? If you apply another person, so you can reduce the duration. Okay, so now it is reduced to 2.5 days. Why it is 2.5 days? Because two people will work in parallel. Okay, so they will divide the total man hours between themselves. So earlier it was, say for 5 days it is 40 man hours, so they will work 2.5 days each. So they will take up 20 man hours each. Okay, and they will complete the work. So this is what happens in real life as well. So you got to plan it out according to the availability. So this is what is known as resource leveling. So to level the resource, either you bring in more resource or you stretch the duration so that the requirement is reduced per day man hour to the available man hour. Or if you want to do it in less duration, then you increase the available man hour to match up the requirement. So that's what. And there is a scenario analysis. So what if a particular aspect is changed on the project? Would that produce a shorter schedule? So let me show you the scenario, how we do it. So basically we are using software only because software makes it easier. So scenario analysis is like this. I'm going to show you the timeline, and timeline is not very difficult to understand. So do you see the timeline on the top?
Yes.
Guys, do you see this timeline on the top?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Now this gives you the bird's eye view of the entire project. Now what happens? See, project has many aspects. It has the aspect of duration, it has the aspect of cost. So let me show you the cost here also. And then it has the aspect of the work effort. So let me show you the work effort also. That is the work. Okay, now scenario analysis 1. The client comes to me, he says, look, I don't want the training. So can you tell me that what is the, the reduction in the duration or the cost if I don't go for the training? I say, fine, that let me tell you. So how do I do it? If I don't do the training, then what is the impact? Will there be a reduction in the duration of the project? Will there be a reduction in the cost? So guys, what do you expect if I remove the training? Will it prepone the project? It's not very difficult to guess.
You will have to look at the critical path. If it's on the critical path, then it might affect the duration. If it's not, then it won't affect the duration of the project.
See, okay, so I know how do I do the scenario analysis. First I create the plan, then I switch off something or the other. Now a client says I don't want the training. I say that okay, if you don't want the training, so let me tell you that what is the impact on time and cost. I go to the top and inactivate the training. Now the training is gone. Do you see any change in the finish date? No, because there is testing. The
Oh,
testing was in parallel. See this. See. Now where is the impact if there is no training? Impact is on the cost and the work effort. The cost reduces, the work effort reduces. The cost reduces only because the work effort is also reduced. and but the date of the finish date is not reduced because that was parallel to programming and testing. The project would still finish on the 7th of June, but the cost would come down from $191,680 to $176,680, and the work effort would come from $3,200 to, I mean 3,200 man hours to 2,640 man hours. Okay, so this is a scenario analysis. Now the client says, look, if I don't do the testing, then what will be the cost of the project? I say fine, so let me switch off the testing, but let's not do the testing. Now if you look at the removal of the testing, so there is just 1 day reduction in the finish date of the project. So finish date shifts from 7th June to 6th of June, but there is a difference in the work hours. Work hour reduces from work, I mean that is the work efforts reduces from 3,200 to 2,840, and the cost is reducing from 191,680 to 174,080. This is a scenario analysis. So in this scenario, I could be having multiple features of a product, and the client could be asking me, oh, it seems to be out of my budget. So can you tell me that what is the price of the project after removing feature number 10? So this is what I do. I remove feature number 10, then I tell him the altered figures. Then he thinks, then he gives me some understanding. He says, no, just do one thing. Please put the feature number 10 back on. Please switch off the feature number 9. So that would be a low priority feature. So, this is a scenario analysis. So you look at various scenarios and then you try to understand that what will fit best within your constraint of time and the cost budget, right? So this is what the project managers, they do on a regular basis before they freeze the project plan. So once it is approved by the change control board consisting of the client and your boss, so that is who is the sponsor of the project. So between these two, these guys will approve and they will give it to you in writing for the approval to start the project, and you will then baseline the project. Okay, so when you baseline the project, so what does a project look like? I'm going to show you a baseline project, because baseline is a word which is very, very common, which will be used very commonly. Baseline, baseline, time baseline. This I'll show you the time baseline. Okay, just have a look. I'm going to switch to the tracking Gantt. Now if you look at the tracking Gantt carefully, the tracking Gantt is basically thinner. It's having thinner bar. Do you see the thinner bars? The bars have become very thin. The bars have
Yes.
become thin to make room for the baseline bar. Now see this. I go to the project and I say set the baseline. So once I set the baseline, it looks like this. There is a gray bar appearing below the red ones, the regular bars. Now baseline is a very good way of tracking the project. If I'm tracking the project, suppose if I'm doing some work in the project, it's like this, and I'm tracking the project. I've started the project, and what I'm saying is that I finish this task, and I finish this task taking 1 day extra. I take 1 day extra to finish this task. Now see, the baseline tells me exactly that what is happening. So if you look at this, see, just look at it, take a snapshot of the before in your mind. I'm going to complete this task. See, originally this task was planned in 12 days. I'm completing it in 13 days, right? So this is the original plan, 12, but I'm completing it in 13 days. Okay. Now what is the impact? See the impact here. The impact will be visible here. Okay, just see here. Just watch this. Okay. So do you see this thing? Do you see?
Yes. Yeah.
So because of the baseline, now you understand that you have to speed up the later task. So what will you do? You would basically look at the later task and try to squeeze out some time there because of the time which is already lost in a delayed task. So that's how we work in a project. we make sure that the nearest milestone, so here is the milestone, I make sure that the milestone is not pushed, but here if you look at this carefully, the successor, they aren't pushed, they're not pushed because the relationship isn't start to start, the finish date is not controlling the start date. But what if requirement analysis gets delayed? If it gets delayed, it's going to push the entire project plan. Just watch it, just take a before snapshot in your mind and just watch. See, the entire project is pushed. Do you see this? The entire project is
Yep.
pushed out. Okay, so that tells you that things are going wrong. So you would try to regain, and come back to the original plan. So where is the original plan? The baseline. So what would you do? You would tell your guys, let's speed up this task. We are delayed by 1 day. Can we do this thing? Can we speed up this task and finish it 1 day earlier than originally planned? Guy says, yes, boss, we have to do it because there is no other way. Otherwise, we would be delayed on the milestone. So what do you do? Originally planned 2 days. You say that, okay, let's finish it in 1 day. Now see what happens on the project plan. Okay, the project plan would, 1 second. Let me put this properly. So what do? You go to the update task. You say, I have taken 1 day, but I have completed it 100%. You have to tell the software. Now do you see that rest of the plan now comes back on the baseline? So that's why we say that my plan is out of the track. Now it is back on the track. It is off the track. So off the track means that it has gone away from the baseline, and on the track means that it is on the baseline. Okay. So I hope you guys find it interesting and useful to understand the fundamentals.
Yes.
So this is
Yeah, yeah.
about the scenario analysis, and this is how we basically monitor and track it. So I hope now you realize that the baselines are very important so that you have something to compare against. If you don't have something to compare against, is it possible to monitor a project? Tell me, is it possible to monitor a project
Yes.
Mm,
without the baselines? Can you monitor a project without the baselines?
Without,
no,
no.
not.
Not at
No.
all, not at all. We need something to compare against. In real life, we have baseline for human body temperature, we have baseline for heartbeat, we have baseline for pulse rate, we have got baseline for the blood pressure, we have got baseline for the sugar level. So, that's how the physicians or the doctors or the medical people, they can treat us. So they know that something is wrong. So in a project health, if you want to measure the health of a project, so you got to set up the baselines in a very, very accurate fashion by doing a very good requirement collection, then the analysis, then very good requirement to scope definition, good work breakdown structure, good estimation, and finally you have a good baseline. And then you are mostly in control of the project, right? So that's why we do all these things. So now we will go to the understanding of the critical path. Now, how many paths, guys, do you see here? How many paths do you see here on this?
4.
4 paths are there. Now
2, 3.
you can see 4 paths.
I see
Now,
4 paths.
yeah. So which one is the critical path?
The up, the on the top, the 7 days.
Yeah, of course. I have put it there so
Yeah.
that you can understand it. So basically, the 7 days. So what the project manager in early times would do? He will draw this diagram and he will highlight this with a red line going through it from start to finish. Okay. So that is a critical path. So he would make sure that everybody within the team he understood, and he would be sure he made himself available. So this is a critical path example. Now here is another one. So how many paths do you see here?
3.
2, 3. 3.
Yes, 3. Okay, so how do we name a path? So we write down the names like this. We say within a circle, we need a bigger one, basically. 1, Then what is the name of the first path if you start from the top?
A, B, E, F, K, L.
Yes, A, B, E,
Okay.
F, K, L. And then you write finish. So that denotes the finish. Now what is the duration of A, B, E, F, K, L?
5, 8, 20.
31.
31?
Yeah,
Then what is
I
the
think. Yep.
next path?
A, C, G, H, K, L.
A,
24.
C, G, H, K, L. Then there's a little bit of dash and then we write finish. So what is the duration? Not good handwriting. Yeah, it looks like
24.
24.
what is the third path?
A, D, I, J, L, F.
And what is the duration?
20.
20.
22.
22?
Oh,
5 plus 8, 13 plus 4, 17 and 3, 20 plus 2 is
Yeah.
22. Right? Okay.
22, yeah.
Now, so tell me that which is the critical path?
The first one.
yeah, the number 1.
Number 1, right. So what do I do? I'll go to the number 1, draw a line through it. So that is the critical path. So good. So it means so you have picked up. So now if you look at software, you know, now you believe that if you see a red, path going through a big software project, a plan, so you would immediately recognize that this is the critical path. And if you look at this, now if I asked you that what is the duration of this project, so what would be your response?
31 days.
31 weeks.
31 days or 31 weeks. Actually it is weeks, so you would say 31 weeks. So that is the minimum time that you need. So what is the definition of the critical path says? The critical path definition says that it is the longest path in the network diagram and it represents the minimum time in which a project can be done. Why it is minimum? Because tell me guys one thing, can the project be any shorter than 31 days?
No.
Not under these conditions.
Yeah, so that is why we say that it represents the minimum or the shortest time for the project in which it can be done. So now with this understanding, what we do that we do this exercise. So, so you have this bunch of paper with you.
Yes.
So
Yes.
on this bunch of paper, you would see that is the first one. So that is your, the first sheet. So let me do this thing. Let me also open the same file here. Okay. So just give me a moment. Okay, so you are on the page number 2. Do you see this diagram on your screen?
Yes.
Yes.
So what I want you to do is to write down the critical path. Or I want you to first of all identify all the 4 paths.
Okay.
So just tell me at a cursory glance, so how many paths do you see here?
3.
4.
Yeah, there are 4 paths. Good, good. So you can just start listing them just like so. What is the naming convention? The naming convention is like this. So you write 1 on your notebook. Then within the circle you write start. Then you write the path's name. That is the A, B, C. That is the first one. It's having 3 tasks. A, B, C, and then it is touching the finish. So it is F for finish within the circle, and you write equal to, and after equal to you write the total duration. So you add the duration of A, 4 plus 3 plus 4. So that is the 11. So this is how you will do for the rest of the 3.
Yes.
Okay, good. Just wait for a while. We want the rest of people to catch up.
Yep.
Nicole is whispering.
Sorry, I make on mute. No worries, I'm done. I think.
I hope you guys didn't whisper during your school days exams. Because you know you would be asked to leave. Okay, tell me the second path.
A, B, F.
And what is the duration of the second one?
14. 14.
And then what is the next path? The third one?
D, E, H.
EH.
And what is the duration?
17.
17.
Mhm.
Then what is the next one?
BGH.
And what is the duration of this? Last one.
15.
15.
15.
15.
15. Okay, so I hope you can see it on my screen as well. I have typed it here. Okay, so
Mhm.
this is the solution. Now, if you look at the path, that is the DEH. So this DEH is the longest path. So the longest path is like this. That is the critical path. So now you know. Now there is something called a float. Okay, before I introduce you to the concept of a float, I have to explain to you that the paths which are shorter than the critical path, they are called non-critical paths. And since they are shorter than the total duration by certain number of days, so that is called float. Now let me show you the float, that where is the float. Okay. Do you see the Gantt chart here in the software?
Yes. Yes.
Now just notice the difference in the screen.
It has two critical paths.
See, in the two critical paths, and these some of these paths they are having this underscore black lines. You know, these are called the float. Now, how to calculate the float? You got to understand this fact. And the float is something which is basically an important aspect of the project management also, so that you can align the resources. Now, you have to align the resources, say from the path which has got more float or to the zero float if you want to balance the resources. Now look at the definition according to the PMBOK. The critical path definition in PMBOK is it is the longest path in the project network diagram which represents the shortest time in which the project can be done. Right. So that is what the PMBOK says. Now in the critical path method, we will do a forward pass, backward pass, then we will be able to calculate the float. So how do we do the calculation of float or slack? So just do this thing, guys. You have the screen which is showing you a rectangle. Okay, so this rectangle, this bigger one is a task. Now ES is the early start, means that how sooner we can start a task. Okay, just do one thing. Just take a screenshot. I'm just pausing here. Take a screenshot and save it as a JPEG file. Okay, and keep it around for a handy reference. Okay, so every task has got 4 attributes. So the top one is the early start, that how sooner you can start a task. So this is the early start. This is written on the top left hand corner. Okay, and how sooner you can finish a task is called early finish. This is written on right hand top corner. And how late you can start a task is called LS late start. This is written on the top left bottom, bottom left. And how late you can finish a task is written mentioned on the right bottom. So that is called the late finish. And this is the formula for the float. The float formula is LS minus ES, means that either you subtract LS minus ES or LF minus EF. So both will give you the same result. Okay, so that will give you the float of this task. So this is how to calculate the float. So what I want you guys is to just take a snapshot of this and keep it handy. And those of you who have an access to a printer, they can take a printout of this page only and keep it with you. You just keep it, take a printout and keep it if you have a printer. If you don't have a printer, try to just keep it in some other screen so that you can just switch between, or you just keep it on your screen because we will be doing the exercise on the paper only. Now, how to calculate the float or a slack? First, we do a forward pass that we start from the start time, then we go to the finish time of a project. Now, have you taken the snapshot of this, of the screen?
Yes.
Okay, fine. Just make sure that you've
Yes.
saved it. Okay, great,
Yes.
good. So let me remove this thing and let me move to the previous screen. So in the previous screen, if you look at this one, okay. So what you have here is an activity which has been started. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to make the assumption here that the project is starting on day one. So I write day one here. If the project is starting on day one, what is the earliest day the activity A can start? Since it is touching the start only?
On day one.
Yes, the early start of activity A would be 1. Now, if the duration of activity A is 4, then what is the early finish of activity A?
4.
Yes. So how do you calculate? Either you can count on your finger day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4. So you can route. Or if you run out of fingers, suppose if you have running into durations of 40, 50, so you cannot use your fingers. So you know what do you do? You need a formula. So what you can say that early start plus duration minus 1. So you can say 1 plus 4 minus 1. 1 plus 4 is 5 and 5 minus 1 is 4. So you can write 4 here. Now if A is finishing on the 4, then how sooner or what is the early start of activity B?
5th.
Yes, exactly. Because this finishes on the 4th evening. So next morning you start activity B. So when can B finish at the earliest if its duration is 3 days?
7th.
7th. When can activity C start?
8th.
8. When can activity C finish at the earliest?
13.
11.
11. Right.
Yeah,
Now we
11.
take up the next path. Now if I follow
Had to do.
if I follow the arrow, what is the next path? What is the next path on your list?
A, B, F.
A, B, F. So now if I go from
F.
B to F,
F is 8.
so what is the early start of F?
8.
8. What is the early finish of F?
14.
So guys, can you do the
8
same
plus
for
7.
D, E, H and D, G, H and tell me?
Yep.
6. 6.
So what is the early start for activity D? Provided it is touching the start of the project, start.
We start 1.
Yes, right.
One.
Because it is having the start as the predecessor, right? Now what is the early finish of activity D?
5.
5.
Yeah.
Now I go from D to E. Now what is the early start of activity E?
6.
Yes, it starts the next morning. So that is the 6th. What is the finish? Early finish?
13.
13.
Yes, 30. And what is the early start of activity H?
14.
14th. Good. And what is the early finish for activity H?
17.
17. So now, what is the next, path which I have to take up?
G. D to
D.
G.
Okay, now if I go to D to G, so what is the early start of G?
6.
6.
And what is the early finish of G?
11.
11.
But if I go from G to H, shouldn't I be taking the early start of H as 12?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, let me do this
This
thing.
is
Let me write 12 here also. Now, can I come from 13 to 12?
No.
Can I come back from the future to the current date? No. But if you look at 11, from 11 to 14 is okay. From 13 to 14 is also okay. But from the 13 you cannot go to the 12. You just can't go in the past. Okay, because it's in a finish to start relationship. So you have to consider the finish date. So when you are going in the forward pass, you consider, see, these are two predecessor. E and G are predecessor to H. So when you are going in the forward pass, you have to consider the larger predecessor or the later predecessor. So from the smaller predecessor, you get 12. From the later predecessor, you get 14. So you stick to 14 only, you cancel out the 12. You do not consider the 12. Right? So it stays like that. Because you can go from 13 to 14, you can go from the 11 to the 14. Right? Now tell me guys, what is the finish date of the project? As you can see now.
17.
Yes,
17. Yes.
because that is the largest value of the finish dates out of C, F and H. So that is the finish date of the project. Now what we are going to do, see, this is what we have done from the top. So early start, early finish, early start, early finish. Now we are going to do a backward pass. Now what is the backward pass? Basically the backward pass would assume that suppose if these tasks C, F and H, if they get delayed to the maximum, so then what will be their late finish date? What will be the late finish date of C? What is the maximum delay that C can go up to? Which date can C go up to?
17.
Yes, maximum the delay date for C is 17, and the same is for F. So you know, I write
F.
17 here, and I write 17 here, and I also write 17 here. That is the maximum that FH and C can be delayed. So you know, now I'm going to do the backward pass. So I go by the path CBA, because first I did ABC, now I do CBA. You know, it is just like returning home on the Yahoo map. Okay. Now, when you are returning, now you have to consider the late finish. Now this is the late finish. Then if 17 is the late finish of activity C, then what can be the late start of activity C? You can count 4 days. Huh? 14th.
Third.
So you can count 4 days on your finger, or you can devise a formula for yourself. You can say 17 minus 4, that is the duration, plus 1. So 17 minus 4 is 13, and plus 1 is 14. Now if you're going from C to B, so then what is the late start for B?
13.
13.
13. 13, because it will finish the previous evening, so that is the evening of 13. But guys, do you note one thing? There is a problem here. Before I go any further, I have to take care of activity F, because B has got 2 successor. C is also a successor, so F is also a successor. I have to find out that out of these 2 dates which I have to consider, because F is also going to give a date, right? Do you notice this thing?
Yeah.
Now what is the late start date of F?
11.
Yes, 11th. Now, if I go from the 11th to the previous day of the 11th is 10. So now tell me guys, so which date you would prefer to keep? 13 or 10?
10.
Yes,
10.
why?
10.
Because you can go from 10 to 14, and you can go from 10 to 11 as well. In both cases it works. So you know, you can devise a thumb rule for yourself. In case you are going backward from multiple successor to one predecessor, take the lowest value. And if you are doing a forward pass, take the greatest value of the predecessor. Okay, so here the thumb rule is reversed. So what you do, you take 10. So then what is the late start of the activity B?
8.
Yes, 8.
8.
And for activity A, what is
7.
the 7?
4.
Yes, absolutely right. Now we do the same thing for HED. Okay, so I'm going back from 14 to E. No. I have to first calculate the late start of activity H. So what is the late start of activity H?
14.
14. So then what is the late finish of the activity E?
13.
What is the late start of activity E?
5.
5 or 6? 13 minus 8 plus 1.
Yeah.
6.
6. Now what is the late finish of activity D?
5.
And what is the late start of activity D?
No. Uh,
1.
1.
you have to calculate activity G. First you go on D.
Yeah. So let's do this thing. If I go from H to G, so what is my late finish?
13.
13. So let's do a check here if we made any mistake. So if I go from 13 to 14, is it fine?
Yeah.
If I go from 13 to 14, it's fine. So
Okay.
both ways it is.
Yeah, okay.
Now, what is the late start of activity G?
8.
8.
8. 13 minus 6 is 7 plus 1 is 8. Now we are going to calculate the float. As you can look at your formula sheet, the float is either LS minus ES or LF minus EF. So how to calculate the float? The float will be calculated like this. So if you look at activity A, okay, I say LS minus ES, 4 minus 1 or 7 minus 4. So what is the float of activity A?
3.
3. What is the float of activity B?
2, 3.
I think it's
3.
3.
3. What is the float of activity C?
6.
6.
6, correct. What is the float of activity D?
4.
No, it is 0.
No,
0, 0.
0.
0.
On
What is,
critical path, there are 0.
yes, so that is a
0.
discovery you would make right now. 6. And what is the float for activity E?
0.
0.
0. And for F, what is the float?
3.
3. This is having 3. And what is the float for H?
0.
0.
0.
And what is the float for activity G?
2.
2. Now if you would notice one thing, that the critical path, it has a float of 0. Its float is 0. So let me mark with a different color. I don't have the red. I have already used it up. So this is your critical path. And it has the float of 0, 0, 0. Now what does it mean? It means that it does not have even a single day for delay. Now activity A can be delayed by 3 days. Activity B can be delayed by 3 days. And activity C can be delayed by 3 days, because if you look at the late finish of the activity C, that is 11. So 17 is the maximum that it can be delayed by. So 17 minus 11 is 6 days. So it can be delayed by 6 days. So it has a room of delay for 6 days. But whereas the activity on the critical paths, they do not have any room for delay. That is why it is called the float. Critical path is not only the longest path, the float on each activity on the critical path is 0. No float. If there is no float, there is no room for delay. So guys, just imagine one thing. If you hang this project plan on a, say, clothesline, I mean the line that we use to dry our clothes line. So you know how it's going to hang all these paths. So critical path is the path which is going to touch the ground, and rest of the path would hang somewhere in the air. Isn't it? If you turned it, if you turned it by 90-degree angles and hung it on a clothesline, the critical path is the longest path which will hang the longest, and rest of the path will be shorter than this. So what is the point of concern for the project manager? The project manager should be concerned about the fact that he should not allow any delay on the critical path, and he should, when planning the project in the planning stage, he should be basically focusing on applying the resources on the critical path, and he should reduce the critical path one by one, okay, to a point where it is realistic. Because he can theoretically he can reduce it, but practically he might not have all the resources available. So you can only reduce the duration to a point where you have the number of the resources available realistically. You cannot reduce way beyond that, even if theoretically you could do it. So make sure that you have a plan which works for you, and you follow that plan, and that's how the time can be managed, right? So this concept of this critical path and the forward backward pass and the float calculation is clear, guys? Any doubt here?
No, it's clear.
Clear. Good. So
It's
what
clear.
now? What you have to do is that you have to do as your say the assignment. You have to do. Come to this page number 148. Page number 148 as on the printed as it is mentioned.
You
Yep.
mean the next page?
Yeah, the next page, just see 148, and do you see question number
Yep.
1? It says list all the path through the network logic diagram. Okay, so let me show it on the screen as well.
Bist du fertig? Ja.
So do you see this on the screen? So list all the paths. So that is your assignment, home assignment, and second is also the assignment. The third is also the assignment. Okay, note it, just mark it that these three you have to do. Now to do the three,
Homework.
yes, homework, yes, homework. So
You
I
mean
believe
on
that it's,
page
I believe that you are doing a
1, 2,
homework.
3.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3, just mark as HW.
Yeah.
I believe that you have been assigned a homework after 20 years, 30 years. Okay, so you still have to do it. Okay.
Yep.
Now, these are the three that you can do. To do the three, so what I have done that for your convenience, I have included an extra page which you would see on the page number 2, which you can use to do the exercise number 3, because you need some room to write your early start, early finish. So this is the page that you have here.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
So you can use this one to do the question number 3. Okay, you don't have to, I mean, redraw. So you can use this one. So to do the question number 3. Now we will do the question number 4. This is also an interesting one. Okay, actually question
Okay.
number 4 and 5, they are combined. In the 4 you draw the network diagram, and in the 5 you answer the question. Right. Now let me tell you that what happens in the real exam. In the real exam, you might not get all the network diagrams, not in the ready-made format. Sometimes you have to create your network diagram. Okay, so if you want to create your network diagram, so you would get tables like this. Okay, just look at this table. So you would get it like this, and you need to draw your network diagram. Okay, so
Yeah, okay.
how do you do it? Now let me show it to you. You just keep this sheet with you. I'm going to do it on the screen. Okay, I'm going to switch my view to the Excel sheet. Okay, in the beginning, what it says that there are 3 column: activity, preceding activity, and duration, right? And what it says in the first row is start. You see the start there?
Yes.
Yes.
So you
Yes.
know what do? You just draw a start like this. So this becomes your start, right? Then you come to the next row. In the next row, it says activity is A, and preceding activity is start, and the duration is 6 days. So since it says the preceding activity is start, and that is A, so I draw the A here. And what is the duration of A? 6 days. And the preceding activity is the start. So I draw a line. Okay, so I draw a line like this. Let me find out that what line can I draw here, because you can draw a line very easily in PowerPoint. But where is the line here? So someone can help me here to find a line here. Where is the line tool?
Under insert should be.
Insert pictures. No, those
Near,
are.
near, don't know.
No.
Insert shapes. Should be.
Insert shapes. Now here insert line chart, pivot table, power view, line, slicer. Where the hell is line? That shouldn't be so difficult.
Yeah.
Page layout, no
Can you
lines,
imagine that?
formulas, data, review.
Um,
Okay, let me do this thing. Let me switch to this.
That's what happened when we upgraded.
So this is start. Okay, so I start with the start. Basically, then I would love to follow the convention. The start is actually round. Okay, I say S. So that is my start. Now the start, then after the start, the next row says that I have activity A. So I say this is my activity A. And the preceding activity is start. So what do? That I draw a line here like this. It goes like this, right? So it goes like this. And what is the duration for the A? It's saying 6,
6.
right? It is 6. Now, if I go to the next row, it says the activity is B, preceding activities A and E. B. Now I draw B. Preceding activities A as well as E.
yes. Oh,
So I draw it like this. I just go here and I draw preceding activity and I draw a preceding activity. Okay, and what is the duration of B?
2.
2. I just write 2 here. B has a duration of 2. So slowly and slowly my network diagram is taking shape. Now I come to the next row. So what is the activity in the next row which is mentioned here?
C.
C.
I draw C. And what is the preceding activity for C?
It's B.
It's B. And what is the duration of C?
2.
2.
C is having a duration of 2. Yes, correct.
2.
2. And the preceding activity is B. So I draw this line. Slowly and slowly a network diagram is shaping up. Okay, so is it okay, guys? Now what I want you guys to do is do the complete exercise by yourself, just right now. You can, if you are not too much comfortable with the PowerPoint, you can use a pencil to sketch because my handwriting is not good. So you can do it quickly. So you can use a sheet of paper, A4 size, and you can use a pencil or a pen to draw this out. Okay, and finish the rest of it, and then we will answer the next question.
Done.
Okay, so someone is done. So that's good. So who is that?
+1.
Okay, good. So now let me tell you also this. You are not going to get any mark for doing this. What you are going to get a mark for is if you can answer this question correctly. This question. That is the purpose of drawing this diagram. So this will happen in real life exam as you go to the PMI. So the PMI will ask you to make a network diagram, but of course do not worry, they will use this one diagram in multiple questions. So it's not that they will make you slog and they will make you draw a network diagram for every question. No, it's not like that. Maybe for 4 or 5 questions in a set, in a row, they will ask you to draw one diagram at least, so that they want to understand that whether you really understand network diagramming or not. So what does this question ask? It is asking, given the table in question 4 above, describe the effect of activity D taking twice as long as planned. Now what is the impact on the network? If D becomes twice as long, The duration of D is currently it is 3. Now if the duration becomes 6, then what is the impact on the network diagram? So D becomes 6 days. So then what is the impact? Will the critical path change?
Yes,
Yes. So now I'm going to
by
ask
1 day.
little bit further. Is it creating an additional critical path, or is it creating a newer critical path?
So can you repeat the question?
Question is this: is it creating an additional critical path, means one more critical path in addition to the existing one, or it is creating a newer critical path, a new critical path?
A new one.
Yes, that is
A
the
new one.
answer. So that's what you will get your
From
marks for. Yes, so you get 1 out of 1. Okay, so you get 1 score for answering. Now what will happen in the exam? In the exam you will have 4 responses, and out of the 4, 1 will be the correct response. So you just have to just press on the click on the radio button of the correct response, right? So your conclusion is that due to increase in the duration of activity D, a new critical path is created. Sometimes what happens, and additional critical path is created. Every project plan will have at least one critical path, right? So we all have understood. Now it seems like a common sense to us, because if you don't have a critical path, then how can you calculate the finish date, right? But when you are doing compression or something, you might have an additional critical path, which is okay. So in this case you are going to have a new critical path. Now if you look at the question number 6, so let me give you the formula for this. I believe that you remember, that is O plus 4M.
most likely.
So this realistic is actually most likely,
Hmm.
okay, plus P
Plus pessimistic
divided by 6.
over 6.
So that is homework. That's homework as well. Now for the question number 7, which is also a homework, the formula is P minus O divided by 6. So you can note the formula for question number 7. That is also a homework for you. And question number 8 is also a homework for you. Okay. It's an interesting puzzle. You can do it. Right? So you know what is more important in the time management is that you are able to do this numericals. Okay. So these numericals you have to practice. So at the end of the training, I'll be providing you a question bank. A question bank will have, I mean, it will have a set of 6 different question sets. So each of the 200. So in the exam, you have 200 questions. So by practicing through them, you will be able to gain the confidence as you move to the third or the fourth. You will be getting marks in the excess of 70 to 75%. So so at that point of time, you can be sure that you can take up the real test and you can crack it. Okay, so you can get the certification.
Quick question.
Yeah.
And for how long will we have access to these question banks after
No,
the
question bank
training?
will be provided to you in the PDF format. So that will be
Okay.
transmitted to you from. I will give you access to my Google Drive. Okay, I don't set any restriction that that is very much commercialization. I don't want that to happen. I want you guys to be successful. So I'll provide you all the sources. I'm doing research day and night that how many new questions are coming. So I keep watching the various forums. So I from where I collect my questions, right? So you guys don't
Okay.
waste your time on the internet trying to research on the things. And if you think you need something, you will definitely find it in my student package. So you will have study guides, you will have question banks, you will have a study planner, which is the most important part. So you got to plan this, and plus you will have an Excel sheet, a template has been created to take up your application form data and to make sure that you fill it right. So you can fill it, you can check it yourself, and if you still feel unsure, you can send it to me for checking, and after that you can fill it into the online. So I will tell you all these things. But for the timing for today, so what you want, what I want you to do is that you do the homework. Okay. So, yeah, tell me.
Can I ask one more question before we move on?
Yeah, ask your questions.
Regarding the regarding applying for the exam and so on, and with the process before you can actually go to take the exam. Do you think we have time until January 15th to take the exam?
See, why are you worried about
With
the
all
January 15? Because they have made small little changes in the training, so which has been taken care of. Okay. So you don't have to worry about that.
It's not very important, but it's like more of a mental deadline that I put for myself. Otherwise, I'll procrastinate forever.
See, actually, I will just tell you. See how to take the exam. So on the 8th day, just don't worry. So you will know if you can meet the deadline or not. See, you have to plan it according to the man hours of the effort. See, every project has a man hour. Now, I tell you that this project has a man hour. See, if you want to take the exam with surety, the minimum man hours that you need is 130. 130 how? See, there are 10 knowledge areas. I say that you need to spend at least 13 hours on each of the knowledge areas, so it adds up to 130 man hours. So that is your first round of the self-study, because some of the knowledge areas will go very quickly, like communication, stakeholder, these are small, but the knowledge areas like time management, cost management, so they will require repeated practice, because now you know how to calculate the correct answer. But the thing is that in exam you have a constraint of time. So you got to take care of that constraint of time by increasing your speed of calculation by practicing more and more. So 130 man hours I have calculated during the last 7 years of the training that I'm conducting for various people. So I have taken this as a sort of baseline that it takes that much of the man hours. So I've created a planner in Excel sheet. As soon as you put your start date, it will give you a predicted date by which you can take the exam. Okay, so you can adjust it and you can use that as a baseline to track your self study, and you will be 100% successful. Okay, you got to manage this, certification exam like a project. So this is one of the most high priority project in your current set of the projects that you're handling. So if you get this project done right, and rest of the project will follow. Got the point?
Yep.
So just
Yeah.
don't worry. I want you to be successful because your success is my success. I get a lot of testimonials from people, those who are successful. So that gives me great business. Okay, so I want you to be successful. So just don't worry about it. So on the 8th day, on the last day, I will explain to you all the tips and tricks. So we have sufficient time. Factored into the training. Those hours or the training duration. to answer all your questions before you start on the self-study. And even after the training, I'm still there. If you can link up with me on the LinkedIn, okay, and you have my mail ID, you can always write to me, and you will always get the answer, right? So no
Very
worries
kind
that.
of you. Very kind of you.
Okay,
So thank
thanks.
you.
Okay, so have a nice time and try this exercise and come back with questions tomorrow.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye. Good night.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.